It's another edition of the Vancouver Hockey Show, the VHS. That's right. Pop us in. Andrew Wadden alongside producer Aaron.
Be kind, rewind.
Yeah. Remember the fees that people had to pay for that?
$2, man.
Right? And like, how did they even know? Like, it could have been somebody there that just went and watched it and then put it back on the shelf. And it's like, oh, who was the last person that got this? Oh, it was Andrew Wadden.
It was a little more rigorous system than that. Yeah.
Ah, the good old days. Yes, reminiscing. Fun week for the Canucks. Maybe a question mark on that. Let's rewind the week as we do each and every week here. 2-1-0 they go. They wrap up the road trip in Chicago last Tuesday with a 4-2 W. Then they come home. They face the Red Wings for the second time in less than a week with a 4-1 W. And then Saturday night against the Winnipeg Jets, a team that, well, they could have in the crosshairs come playoff time. A 4-2 loss in that one. So we'll get to the loss last. Let's go all the way back to Chi-Town. Dakota Joshua with a career night that night, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, gets into a fight, Gordie Howe hat trick. Now, we found out afterwards that he sustained an injury and he's missed the last couple of games. Because of that, he's week to week. Dollywall tweeting out that it sounds like it was during that fight. Don't know exactly what it is. Let's just call it a lower body injury. Or would your hands be a lower body injury? Mid body injury?
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how low your arms hang, I guess.
Yep.
But anyway, good night for Dakota Joshua. Good night for the Canucks. And then they face off against the Red Wings. And like I said, it's the second time in less than a week that they faced off against each other. There was some chippiness in that first game against the Wings. Zadorov, of course, got the suspension after he clipped Lucas Raymond in the head. And I would like to say, too, that there were a few people that were pushing back on our TikTok video because I talked about Zadorov clipping Raymond in the head. And I had more than one response of Lucas Raymond diving. And I thought that was a little ridiculous. And it was nice to hear Zadorov come out and say, no, like I was late. I hit him. I deserved the suspension. So
he owned it.
I get it, people. It gets very tribal when it comes to your team, your players. You want to defend them at all costs. But like that needs to get out of the game. I'm sorry. I can't stand headshots. They scare the hell out of me. We've seen what's happened to people with serious cases of CTE. We've seen ex-football players doing.
Yeah. Not just hockey, like
exactly.
all sports, like even like gymnastics, man, like some of the stuff.
Soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I know that you want to, stick up for your favorite players, your favorite teams, whatever. But like stuff like that's just not defendable. And I'm glad that Zadorov was the bigger man, pun intended there. And coming out and saying that, yeah, no, it was my mistake. Like I missed him and I deserve to get suspended. So I wanted to get that off my chest. But they face off against the Red Wings again. Zadorov's back into the lineup and the Canucks end up getting the W off the back, in my opinion, of Thatcher Demko, who was absolutely outstanding in that game, especially in the third
glove
period.
save, like the hand glove
save.
The
blocker. Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong. I think it was Sprong. He didn't get all of it. And if he had got all of it, Demko still made the save, would have been unreal. But the fact that it almost made it even harder too, because Sprong sort of whiffed on it a bit. So the puck sort of knuckled.
As Demko was rolling backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he didn't make a glove save. He didn't make a blocker save. He made a palm save. He caught it with the palm of his blocker, which I thought was unbelievable. The save on Kane in the third period on the power play, the cross ice, just post to post. That is just chef's kiss right there. Love that stuff, especially against a superstar, future Hall of Famer and Patty Kane. So kudos to Thatcher Demko in that one, his 30th win of the season. Elias Lindholm, though, too, we can't forget him. I mean, he makes his home debut. Now, of course, he's played at Rogers Arena many times in the past, but he makes his home debut at Rogers Arena as a Vancouver Canuck, and he scores twice in that game. The guy just loves the debut.
On the Schmergiberg line.
I love that as well. That's the all Swedish line there.
Yeah. I saw some people online going, "Oh, it's the Swedish House Mafia line." Nah, man, it's the Schmergiberg.
No, the Schmergiberg is way more creative. Swedish House Mafia, come on.
And Lindholm almost had a hat trick, so it would have been Bork, Bork, Bork.
Why don't they call him the ABBA line? Right? ABBA's far more popular than Swedish House Mafia was, at least back in the day.
The knowing me, knowing you line. Yeah.
I couldn't stand the Dancing Queen is by far one of the worst songs in history. And I know that there might be people listening to this going, "You're an idiot."
No, ABBA's a good group, but yeah, Dancing Queen, no.
Cannot stand the Dancing Queen.
Can't, but ABBA is a good group.
Every family function growing up.
Weddings.
Yes. And I've DJ'd a few weddings too, and I can't stand the Dancing Queen.
Although I'll play the Dancing Queen over the Monster Mash. Who the hell wants to hear the Monster Mash at a wedding? I had so many requests when I was
Monster Mash at a wedding?
Yeah.
Was it during Halloween?
No.
Those people are crazy. Those people need to be studied. All right, let's get back on track here. Saturday night, and it was the big one. Everyone had this one circled. The Jets
Even
and the Canucks.
people on the East Coast had this one circled.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, listen, two of the best teams in the NHL, two of the best teams in the West, going at one another. And all right, the refereeing was suspect. It was. They played a factor in this game. The special teams ended up winning it in the end for the Jets. If you look at the underlying stats at 5-on-5, they're not that bad for the Canucks. Like, the Canucks look like they were the better team at 5-on-5. But again, this game was won on special teams. And this is also not one of those games where you want to study the underlying stats to determine who won the game, because they don't tell the truth in this one. The Höglander roughing call on Pionk was rough. The elbow comes up, hits him sort of in the chest, and then he snaps his head back like he's, at a Metallica concert, like banging his head or something. So that one was suspect. Again, there was just a few calls that just didn't go the Canucks' way. Whatever. That's
the PDG call. No, I think that was a little too much for what that was.
But regardless, you gotta work through these things.
Yep.
And there's a few things that I saw that were really glaring in this game. Let's just do a couple of positives first. Noah Juulsen getting his first goal as a Canuck is outstanding. His first goal since November of 2018. That's unbelievable. He's only got 3 goals in his NHL career, and his NHL career hasn't been all that, luxurious, I guess you could say.
But he was doing a lot in that game too. Some big hits.
Well, no, and he's done a lot he's definitely outplayed what a lot of people thought he was going to be this year. He's been a great story for the Canucks this year. Local product, former first-round pick as well. Like, this guy had a lot of cachet coming into the NHL, and it's taken him a while to find it again, but he's found it here with the Canucks. And, if you're going 6 years between goals, like, kudos to you. So well done for Noah Juulsen, especially to continue to stick it out as well. Tyler Myers with the dirty dangle. I called him Connor Myers.
Yeah.
I think many people got it. But
I was watching that just going, okay.
Yeah.
you going to pass it?
Yeah.
Oh, back of the net. Oh, okay. That works. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
With that telephone pole that he uses for a stick as well, just dangling through everybody. So,
but it was like everybody was standing there going, what the hell's this guy doing? And he just kind of walked through everybody.
It's like, what is this? What is he doing? Oh my God, it's in the back of the net. That's a positive, obviously, but also a bit of a negative when it's Noah Juulsen and Tyler Myers that are the guys that are scratching the score sheet for you, right? Secondary scoring has been something that the Canucks have been able to get all season long. I think in this game, what really stood out to me was the big boys getting shut down, especially what do you call it again?
Schmergiberg.
The Schmergiberg line was not good. The shot share was 6-1 with them at 5-on-5 versus the Jets, or with the 6-1 for the Jets, that is, at 5-on-5. Expected goals at 31% for that line. They're outscored 1-0. They're outchanced 6-3. The high dangers were 3-0. Like, you see my point here. Like, they were completely outplayed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue here for the Canucks. Not only that, it just, you look at that fourth line of the Canucks, and they were basically buried in the third period on the bench. And yeah, sure, fourth lines, you're down. Why are you talking about the fourth line? I'm talking about that because Winnipeg just rolls. They roll 4 lines, and they got a big defense like the Canucks have, and they've got the goaltending that the Canucks have. They are the Canucks kryptonite right now from the looks of it. So a decent week for the Canucks, but maybe one that ended on a sour note because of the fact that the fans are looking so forward to facing off against one of the top teams in the West, other top team in Canada, and the Canucks failed to get a W. Okay, let's dive into some of the bigger stories of the week, some things that I'm sort of looking at. Power play woes right now. So we praised the fact that they went over a 3-game span at 60%. They were 6 for 10 over a 3-game span. Now, this was just before this recent dip. Because over the last 6 games, they're now 0 for 20 on the power play. Now, they got a 3-2-1 record over that span. And the second unit, I don't know if you've noticed, they've been getting some starts even on the power play. Just because the first unit's been dipping. Now, 11th in the NHL still, 23.1%. So they're still there, but that is just something that you got to keep an eye on here with the Canucks. And sitting there thinking to myself before we started recording today, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, what should they do here? Should they mix up the personnel? Like, what, you saw that Lindholm was having some success on the net front on those first few games of him on the road, with him on the road. Yeah, and then now goals. That's dried up. So, I'm wondering, like, maybe it's just a change of personnel. Maybe they mix up those 2 units. We'll have to see. But an 0 for 20 over 6 games, like, that's, at this point, it's a bit of a concern. No, it's a lot of a concern, actually.
Well, there was something that caught my eye at the end of the game versus the Jets that I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of sums up how this player is going at the moment. That complete swing and a miss of Petey on that check on the boards there. And I'm just like, oh yeah, like Pettersson needs to kind of complete a bit more.
Perfect segue, dude, because I have Pettersson versus the top teams in the West here. So take a look here. Hear me out. Okay. So outside of the Canucks, there's probably 5 teams in the West that are dangerous, right? Dallas, Vegas, Winnipeg, Colorado. And let's put Edmonton into that conversation now. So Petey versus the top teams in the West. He's played 8 games. He's got 8 points. You're like, that's good. What are you talking about? A point a game, right? Well, 7 of those are against Edmonton. And 6 of them came in the first 2 games of the season. And if you remember, they swept those 2 games against Edmonton. One of them was an 8-1 final, I believe. It was an 8-1 and 4-3. That's right. So 8-1 in that first game. And as we've seen, Edmonton is a much different team from October 11th to
night and day,
mid-February, right? It is exactly. It's night and day now. They've found themselves. They found their game. So again, maybe, those points are inflated a little bit right now because of the way that the Oilers were playing back then. So that's my point. Like against Dallas, 2 games played, 1 goal. Against Vegas, they've played them once, no points. Against Winnipeg, as we saw, no points. He was a -1 in that game. Against Colorado, they've played him once, no points. He was -2 in that game. You got 26 games remaining on the schedule for the Canucks. Now, a lot of them are at home, which is good, but they got Vegas 3 times. They got Winnipeg twice. They got Colorado twice. They got Dallas one more time. These are going to be tough games for the Canucks. These are going to be the games that sort of define them as they go down the stretch here. I don't really care about them finishing, with the top record in the NHL. Like, I think they want to win the Pacific. I think that's definitely got to be a goal. I think having the best record maybe in the West, I don't know if that's necessarily got to be a goal, but it would definitely be good. And I guess if you do get the top record in the West, you're probably going to be the best team in the NHL because the East is a few points behind the West right now when it comes to the top teams. But again, like for the Canucks, I think the key here is, like, you want to get that home ice for sure, but you got to play well against these top teams, and you got to have your best players playing well against these top teams. And right now, Petey, I don't want to say he's taking a bit of heat because he's not really. I have seen other, people talking about it, and there's a lot of pushback from the fans. They don't want to hear it because they'll throw to you other stats that, basically show Petey in a different light. And that's fine. Those are valid as well. Like when he's racking up points against, Chicago or San Jose those all count too, but they're NHL teams. But my point is this, when you see him, against the Colorados with no points, against Winnipeg, against Vegas, against Dallas with just 1 goal, like those are concerning right now. And those are going to be tough matchups come the postseason. Do I think Elias Pettersson can persevere? Do I think he can break through? Absolutely. He's a superstar in this league, but it's just something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Okay. Earlier in the week, Rick Dhaliwal tweeting out that Phil Kessel was headed to Abbotsford. He was going to be skating with the Abbotsford Canucks. And I believe
that was the local Canucks break the internet moment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so cool to see just the love for Phil Kessel. It's like universal. Everybody they want to see the guy do well. Now, that first practice, the video that was circulating around wasn't all that flattering for Phil. Phil's never been the most physical specimen when it comes to fitness. But at the same time, too, the guy is also, arguably a Hall of Famer.
He's doing more on skates than I could, man. So
he's racked up a ton of goals in his career. Like, we know what Phil Kessel is. If you thought he was going to come in here and be Rod Brindamore, with the fitness tests, like, you're kidding yourself. I think one of the things that's interesting about Phil is he could really solve a few issues for the Canucks. And one of those issues could be, really what their approach at the trade deadline could be. I'm going to continue to bang the drum that they got to get rid of Ilya Mikheyev. Mm-hmm. Like, I broke it down on the last week's podcast. The money what they could use with his money at 4.75 with the 1.8 that they have, like, they could do so many things with over $6 million at a trade deadline.
And I pointed out to you last night after we chatted after the game, he tries to shoot the rebound that comes off the Juleson goal because the goal just popped right in the net and came out. He tries and goes for the rebound to follow through, and he just shoots it right into Hellebuck, even though like Hellebuck was like, oh, it went past me. So it's like he had a free give me and it couldn't even get in the goal after the whistle. So
yeah. Listen, man, he's just he's desperate right now, man. Also, you might not have seen it go in for who knows. Regardless.
Well, no, like it happened so fast, but It was like you had a free rebound.
24 games without a goal now, though. His last goal came, I believe it was December 17th, and their next game was the 19th of December. So since that mark, over those 24 games, 8 points, and he's a -7. So if Kessel can come in here and if you could put him into that top 6, now I'm not saying every single night, and maybe you are still sort of hunting for somebody to add into that space, especially if you are able to move Mikheyev. But if Phil could come in here and over these next 26 games, let's say he plays 15 to 20 and gets you 5 to 7 goals, like, that'd be all right.
Yeah.
Right? And, maybe he allows the Canucks to start exploring, getting rid of Ilya Mikheyev. No, I wouldn't be surprised if they're already doing that right now. Now, there is a bit of a risk there because he does kill penalties, and there are different things that Ilya Mikheyev does in the game that aren't just counting stats.
And to Mikheyev's credit, he was a little bit more aggressive in the game against the Jets. Like it seemed like he was getting a little bit more into people's faces than he was previous games.
But with that contract and that lack of production in terms of scoring, like, it just can't happen, especially if he's playing in the top 6. So if Phil Kessel can come in and fill in a void here and there and maybe give them an option to be able to move Mikheyev, bring in somebody else that could play in the top 6, bump some guys down. I don't like Nils Åman right now. I don't like his, I shouldn't say, it's nothing personal against Nils Åman. I don't like Nils Åman's game right now, right? It just doesn't seem to be, translating at an NHL level. Can't trust that fourth line. Look at a team like Vegas. They're going to come at you in swarms, and it's going to be rolling line after line after line after line. Same thing we saw with Winnipeg. Like, Vancouver cannot be a 2.5 line team, or, that third line has been very good for them.
But we were missing Joshua. So like,
maybe I was thinking about it too. Maybe Joshua could be somebody that, you might want to flirt into, giving some more power play time to. I don't know. Nils Höglander has shown that he's been able to give some flashes of production as well. So, again, there's different options here, but Kessel could really, make things a little bit different for Vancouver in terms of, the personnel that they could sort of move around if he was able to come in and be able to produce for the Canucks. It's a big if here, though. It's a big if. And as we record this, there is still no guarantee that Phil Kessel is going to be anywhere near the Vancouver Canucks and whether they're going to sign him.
Yeah. And for me, like we've talked a lot about Kessel's stats, but I think there's one kind of key piece there that the Canucks need that you can't really put on paper. And I think that he does bring that good leadership role that might be a little bit of a boost into the locker room, right? Of just having him around. Because you mentioned, like, everybody was like in love and enamored with this guy when like the announcement was he was in Abbotsford, right? So why wouldn't you want that energy around the team too, just to be that boost?
But they got a mascot already. right? Like, I hear what you're saying, but like that's a roster spot.
Yeah.
Finn doesn't take up a roster spot.
Yeah.
So I do see what you're saying, but he has to be able to play. Like, you just can't have
if he plays and he is also that guy in the locker room, then sweet. Then that's
exactly.
win-win.
That's win-win at that point. Yeah. So again, let's see what this week brings, because it is a pretty big week ahead for the Canucks. So let me get to that in just a second. But let's see what this week brings for Phil Kessel, and whether we're going to hear that the Canucks sign him or not. Could be an interesting week ahead. You got to feel good for the local product, Arshdeep Bains. And also, too, for Jet Wu, who is, a Canucks draft pick that has been basically in the system for what feels like forever now. Wu gets his first call up to the NHL, and I didn't see NHL ice, but he got a little taste of the environment. So good to see him get rewarded in that regard. And from what I hear down in Abbotsford, he's been very good. And, maybe Jet Wu could be a piece of the Canucks future. But Arshdeep Bains as well, unsigned, free, undrafted, that is, free agent. Big time junior scorer, Surrey product. Yeah, just a very cool story for the local product to be able to get called up by the team. Now we'll see. He might play against Minnesota on Monday. We'll have to see about that. But again, a couple of cool stories for the Canucks, and a good story in terms of their development as well, which is something that we just did not see under the old regime, even though the Jet Wu was one of Benning's draft picks. But good stories there for Bains and Wu, and let's see if Arshdeep Bains will get himself into the lineup this week, which, as I mentioned, is a big week. Starts on Monday against the Wild, and then they got a back-to-back Tuesday in Colorado. That's going to be a tough game right there. See what the Canucks are made of, and let's see what, as I called him out earlier, let's see what Elias Pettersson has in that game, because it's going to be tough matchups against the Colorado Avalanche. Thursday they're in Seattle, so a little I-5-ery. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, but those games are always fun. And then, of course, Saturday night at Rogers Arena, the Boston Bruins.
But 4 p.m. start, though. So.
Gotta cater to the Bruins, do they? Oh, no. Are people going to get all upset like they do when it comes to the Maple Leafs with that as well? I doubt it. By the way, too, I've said this so many times. On either the radio shows I used to do, the old podcast, the 4:00 start is awesome, folks.
It is.
Like, I don't understand.
Especially in March and April when the sun's still out in the evening. Oh,
you got to be kidding me. Now, it's February 24th, but it does feel like it's April or that game. It will be on February 24th, that is. But it does feel like it's April right now. A baseball practice yesterday outside. It's unbelievable. This is also unbelievable, folks. We got a new Patreon. Become a Patreon member. Head over to Patreon, Vancouver Hockey Show, just $5 a month. You'll get these episodes a day early. And we're going to do some exclusive Patreon only post-game pods. Get your feedback, get you guys involved as well. And we'll have some exclusive content. And we're looking at merch as well. We got some really cool designs put together. We're just trying to figure out how to get them to you guys. But stay tuned for all of that. But head over to Patreon. Again, right now, your support would be our support, right? We'll promise you ad-free episodes through the Patreon, so you get that as well. But right now, we are community run. So come over and give us a support. That would be much appreciated. All right, big week, like I said, ahead for the Canucks. So we'll unpack all of it again next week here on the Vancouver Hockey Show. For producer Aaron, I'm Andrew Wadden. Thanks for listening, everyone.